Good afternoon and welcome to Rubbin'minds. My name is Isabella Adediji. Now we know that Nigeria continues to suffer from education inequity as millions of children are out of school. And it's even questionable for those who remain in school, the quality of education received. Now there's a lot that government is doing, but to solve this issue of education inequity, government alone can't do that. And that's why we have organizations like Teach for Nigeria who are deploying fellows for 2-year fellowships in underserved communities to improve educational outcomes and also create positive change as leaders. Joining us is a board member and CEO of Teach for Nigeria in the person of Ayodele Olajiga. Welcome to Rubbin'minds.
Thank you, Isabella.
Now, just tell us what Teach for Nigeria is doing, like in a nutshell, for those who are unfamiliar with the work of Teach for Nigeria.
Okay, so if you think of education, there are two challenges, like you mentioned. There's access, and then there's the quality of the access. And so we work on the quality of the access. Well, our program basically, we train fellows for 2 years. We place them in underserved communities, and then they work with students on improving learning outcomes and the like. We also work with existing teachers as well. And then once they've done their 2 years, our alumni then go on, hopefully, to provide leadership in society around addressing education inequity.
So I'm going to take you back to my intro, which looked at out-of-school children, looked at the state of education in Nigeria. What are the official statistics? Because these days, depending on whether it's the World Bank or UNICEF, the data keeps fluctuating. But what we know is that Nigeria continues to top this list when it comes to out-of-school children. How would you evaluate the current education situation here in Nigeria?
Well, I think the challenge is dire. First of all, I use UNICEF, but whoever you're looking at, the number is a lot of millions. One is that 1 in 5 of out-of-school children in the world is in Nigeria. I think according to UNICEF, we're 10.5. And what that means is that you have a section of our society that are starting off life and they've got no access. And the situation is just going to get worse and the gap is going to grow. And if you want to grow a society that is competitive, a country that is growing, you need everybody to have the basics so that they can have options. Once you miss the basics, your options narrow.
Now, I know growing up, I've heard parents, people of the older generation say good things about the public school system. But now we're seeing a trend where most parents want to put their children in private schools, but not everybody can afford private school tuition. And even with the rising cost of transportation or food, petrol, we're seeing more people going back to the public schools. Now, how can those people in the public school get a good education when there's so much disparity between those private schools and public schools?
So if you want to solve problem at the individual level, private works. When you want to solve it for the country or systemic, you got to address the public school system. And so first of all, primary school education in Nigeria is free. So it's really all about working very hard to improve the quality of what our primary education is. In the underserved areas, no infrastructure, we don't have enough teachers, the quality of the teachers and the training is not where it's supposed to be. And that's where we work. And really for me, it's our alumni, we have over 1,000 of them now and it's growing, is that at some point, these change makers will overwhelm the system such that our primary, our public school systems become top of the pack again. I mean, they're never going to overtake, the private school system, but for the masses, for everyone, the public systems must work, be it transport, health, or education.
Now, some will argue that if you want to solve the problem of education in Nigeria, we need to have higher budgetary allocation. But that's something that's within the purview of the government. But what can be done now in the short term to start really raising those educational outcomes within the public education system?
Well, I think, first of all, the budget, what is allocated to it is nothing. I mean, I was in hunger, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and I heard in Syria alone, education is now 25% of the budget. Wow. And that's kind of the direction we need to go. I mean, it's 3 of them. It's education, healthcare, and food. Those 3 things, we need to raise whatever the contribution is now to maybe half of the budget. But I don't speak for government. I think, in terms of trying to solve this problem, we need to look at the primary education system, the foundational learning, because even if we can't solve secondary school, once the foundation is right and the individual is okay, they can look after themselves. But if the foundation is off, then nothing happens.
And what are those systemic challenges that are plaguing the primary school education system? Because we have graduates who can't read and write. We have graduates who cannot take on jobs because they don't have that foundational literacy. So what needs to be done at that primary school level?
So for me, at least as for me, Teach for Nigeria, we focus on numeracy, literacy, and what we call social-emotional learning, which is around self-awareness, problem solving, all of those things that makes the individual allow you to take hold of your agency. And those three things we think are very crucial. At the moment, I think UNICEF, 70% of Nigerian, kids in schools can't read properly, and maths is not where it's supposed to be. The more controversial part of it, which I ask myself, is not a Teach for Nigeria position, is in asking people to learn English before they can, learn the other things like numeracy, be able to think. Is that a hindrance? Because English is a language, right? So should we be teaching people these things in their local language and then making sure they take English or whatever language is required as a second subject, rather than if you can't speak English, suddenly you're out of, maths, all of those things.
So I think if the government is serious about making sure that education is accessible, then it has to take into consideration the different languages spoken before the child even gets into the formal education system. Now, I want to look at the role of the fellowship in addressing these education inequities that we see. What's interesting is that it's a leadership initiative. So let us know what the fellows do beyond just going into school to teach, because some would say NYSC already solves that. So what's different for the Teach for Nigeria Fellowship?
So they spend 2 years. So we're producing leaders who spend 2 years in an underserved community. So the first thing that happens is the empathy and the understanding of the problem, they get it. They become resilient. And then there's something they do in the fellowship, which is solve a problem in the community. So it's called the Be the Change program, right? So they're solving a problem. So when they come out after the fellowship, we then see them go on to try to address problems at a system level. So we have, for instance, in one of our alums in Ota, they have a free school, right? Which is they take kids who there's no tuition. They bring them in there and they're giving them that foundational education. And it's that type of stuff that we think we're going to start to see come out of our alumni. We're hoping some of them will also go into the public sector, because you have to change the system. And because the other thing we found is there's no one single problem in education in Nigeria. It's almost different from community to community. So so you can allocate more budget at the federal level, but you still got to solve it at the local government and state level.
And are there any disparities you're seeing between rural, urban, and semi-urban areas when the fellows are deployed to these underserved communities?
So what we've seen is that the kids, in terms of potential, be it rural or urban, no difference. What the issue is that in the rural areas, they don't have access to infrastructure. Some of them, no electricity, no internet. So it's all about addressing the infrastructure issues, then giving them, high quality teachers, and they'll compete anywhere in the world.
And these fellows, what impact do they have on their communities and even on the other teachers who are already in these schools? Are they seen as threats, or is there a complementary relationship going forward?
In the beginning, it was like, who is this? But now what we're seeing is, first of all, the fellows are learning from the existing teachers. The existing teachers are also learning from the fellows. So we're seeing that, collaboration going on. We've also then added existing teachers to our fellowship as well, so that you have that happening. Then the other thing is we've also introduced school leaders development program. So we're basically then tackling it at the leadership of the school, existing teachers, and new fellows. And so what happens is you've seen teachers where they're basically changing mindsets, because suddenly teachers are like, oh, I would like to do this stuff differently. So the application into our fellowship from existing teachers is actually quite competitive. The other bit is that they also work with parents to get them engaged in education and the like. So all of this, so in the community, any community that we're in, from the leadership of that community, that's the Oba or whoever it is, all the way down, everybody knows we're around, and the fellows are working with everybody to address, education inequity issues.
And then what are some of the measurable outcomes? Have you seen maybe improvement in literacy, numeracy? Have you seen maybe school retention figures go up, the tangibles?
Yeah, so RAND Corporations, the US, it's an independent party, looked at our program, and what we've seen is numeracy and literacy. Our kids, the TFN classrooms, are about anything between 4 to 5 months ahead of the non-TFN class. And what's then going to happen is that just starts to compound on itself. So we are at least a term ahead of the non-TFN classes, at least in numeracy and literacy.
So how are you able to fund all of this? Do you work with government? Do you work with stakeholders? And I know people are listening and saying, "Oh, how can we support?" So what are the avenues for that?
So we basically have 4 sources. The one is state government is crucial, because when our fellows go in, it's important that they get onto the state's payroll, because otherwise it becomes unsustainable. Then we get a lot of funding from foundations, both local and international, who support the program. Individuals can also, go on our website and set up either one-time donation or recurring donations. And then you can also in kind. So Starlink has given us internet access, which will be hopefully rolling out in Ogun State. We also there's a company called Blue Eti who's also giving us solar power as well. And finally, T.Y. Danjuma Foundation support every year, I think, the training of anything between 500 to 600 teachers as well. So everyone can get involved, everyone, and everyone should get involved.
So are there any ongoing fundraising efforts that individuals can also plug into? Because you've mentioned foundations, but you mentioned also the website. Maybe you can share details of the website and any fundraising activities going on now.
Yeah, so our website is teachfornigeria.org. So once you click on it, a big banner will come out saying give, so that's there. And then we're doing a 40 million naira drive with Hans and Renee, where we're supporting I think it's about 1,000 kids that want to support their education. So individuals you can go to Hans and Renee, or you can also check through our website the link to donate to the Hans and Renee 40 million naira fundraising drive.
And I think my final question is, what does a world in Nigeria look like to you where there's education equity?
It's a beautiful Nigeria, right? It's a Nigeria where, we're creating a more prosperous and equal society in terms of how resources are everywhere. People are enjoying themselves. Everyone is I don't want to say wealthy, but everyone is okay. And I'll give you an example. There's a community now where there's a community program that came where the kids go and gather plastics. They sell it to make furniture for their classrooms. So, and in that community, that by being in that community, we've raised the wealth of that community. So I think if we start to address education, things like productivity issues that we have in Nigeria will disappear. We have more innovation, but we have it at a mass level. It's not just, pockets here and there, but it's more at a mass level. That's what the issue is, because there are people who are innovating and productive in Nigeria, but we're not seeing it at scale. Yeah.
Yes. So one more time, the website address for those of our viewers that would like to donate, to contribute in cash or in kind to the work that is being done by Teach for Nigeria.
Yeah, so it's teachfornigeria.org, and you're right on our website. Just scan and give some money.
Thank you very much, Ayodele Olajiga, CEO and board member at Teach for Nigeria.
Thank you very much.